Welcome to Test Those Breasts podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a recent breast cancer survivor. My life has been pretty nutso for over a year, and many of you most likely know just how overwhelming this diagnosis is, and the more I can help empower women, the better. I launched my podcast on June 11, 2023, which was the 1-year anniversary of my diagnosis, as a healing mechanism, and have made it my mission to help shorten the learning curve for future diagnosed breast cancer patients and their caregivers. I want you to know that you are not alone. I was told from the very beginning that being diagnosed with breast cancer opens us up to the sisterhood of all sisterhoods. But some people need that extra help and encouragement and all of the confusing and many times downright scary information they are being flooded with. I've been interviewing many survivors, caregivers, oncologists, surgeons, nurses, therapists, advocates, and more in order to provide much needed holistic guidance for your journey. Breast cancer is such an epidemic, so the more empowered we are, the better. Now let's listen to this next episode of Test Those Breasts.
Well, welcome back. I'm so excited to be joining the Test Your Breast podcast today. My name is Min. I'm a podcast producer, and I've helped a lot of female coaches and entrepreneurs launch their podcast. And when Jamie Vaughn had reached out for me to help produce this one, I was super excited because when we were bouncing around ideas, Jamie, we were talking about the 23 things that you learned in 2023 after your diagnosis from breast cancer. By the way, first of all, we're very happy to still have you on this earth. And second of all, I'm excited just to dive into this episode because I know that these lessons are not just lessons from surviving breast cancer, but like lessons in general.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Min. I'm so excited that you're here. You are the one that gave me the idea, actually, to end this year, 2023, with 23 things that I learned this year. And so I really appreciate that because it made me reflect so much about everything that has happened just this year. And 2023 started with me being breast cancer free. So I wanted to emphasize that because there are so many things that we learn and things that we go through even after we are deemed cancer free.
Right.
So I figured that the most fitting person, because you've helped me in other ways with my podcast and you're so savvy. So if anyone is out there who is starting a podcast, is maybe struggling with their podcast, whatever, you should reach out to Min because she is just a wealth of knowledge. And I just thought this episode was so fitting. And it was so fitting to have you interview me on this one. And this one will drop. I feel honored. And you're in Canada. I'm in the United States. And so it's so cool to make those connections with people all over the world. And I was on your podcast, Share a Latte, which is such a cool name. I love it. And you interviewed me on my birthday in October and it released in November. And that was just such a fun interview that I had with you. And we'll put that in the show notes because I think people need to listen to that as well.
Yeah,
so thank you for being here.
To how you have survived your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I just think we should just dive right into this and start talking about some of the things that I learned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So I would say one of the first things I learned was that breast cancer diagnosis like mine is never really over. And a lot of people think that when you are deemed cancer free, that, hey, we're getting on to normal life and everything's going to go back to the way it was. And it just is not. Oh, no, it did not happen that way. And part of me is I'm so glad that it didn't because I feel so much different now in my mind and my body and my soul. Physically, my body. We'll talk about that later, but just in the way that I see things, in the way that I relate to people, in the way that things are just so much more, I guess, just more crisp and clear in my mind now. And so it's just not over. And the reason I started thinking about that was because last February, when I was cancer-free, I was deemed cancer-free about 1 year ago, a few days ago. It's a year ago on Wednesday, the 20th, which is just a few days away. And I was deemed cancer-free at that time. That was my post-op from my breast surgery in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So in February, you would think, and I had just had another major surgery in January because I had a tumor they needed to remove from my thoracic cavity.
I remember.
So it kind of makes sense that I was feeling this way. I was feeling really super depressed, down, didn't have any significance in my life. I didn't have a purpose. All my treatments were over. I was in my first year of retirement. And before breast cancer, I was so busy, so many things going on, and I had significance. I had a purpose. I was a teacher. I just had a lot of things going on. And then I had to deal with this breast cancer. And in February, I just didn't feel like I had anything worth even anything about me. So that's where this podcast was born. And so breast cancer, when you get breast cancer or any cancer for that matter, it's just never over, even when you're cancer free. I just want people to understand that there's a lot more education that goes into it. And because of this podcast, I'm still immersed in the breast cancer world. So that was my first one.
So why the podcast?
I had a podcast before I retired. Yes, and it was about education. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I thoroughly love to interview people. I thoroughly love to talk to people about what matters most. And so I had a really good time with that. And when I was feeling so low about myself and with no significance, I knew that I had to find something that was going to bring value to my life and to help me through that healing process. And so I was like, oh my God, a podcast. Because I can help other breast cancer patients and even people who have yet to be diagnosed. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that when I was diagnosed, I was blown away. I was devastated, thrown to the ground, overwhelmed with all of the information coming at me. And mind you, I knew a lot about breast cancer before because I had friends with breast cancer. I've had 2 lumpectomies in the last 10 years that were benign. I knew that I had to go in and get my mammograms and make sure that I did that every single year. So it's not like I knew nothing, but there were a lot of things I did not know. And I really, truly want to help people go into a diagnosis like this with a whole heck of a lot more information than I did and awareness and things like that. So that's why I did that and test those breasts. Early detection is where it's at. And so test those breasts.
Love this. It really plays into your teacher mentality. I love that too.
Yeah. Somebody told me, so you're really getting back to your teacher roots with this podcast. And it is true. It's true. Who knew I was going to be doing this, right? And also I get to interview some amazing people. I've interviewed surgeons, oncologists, and radiologists, and other survivors, various types of therapists, just all kinds of people, caregivers, all kinds of people that add value. And because I don't want people to go to my podcast and go, that was all right. That was okay. Yep. I want people to walk away just like, wow, mind blown.
From an outsider who has listened to a couple of episodes and had her own scare, it set my mind heavily at ease. Oh. So if you are feeling something or you feel like you aren't doing regular detections, because I don't know a woman who is before you get the scare. When I had my scare, your podcast, when I was listening to it and going through the process, I was fortunate. Mine was benign. But when I was going through that process, just being informed helped set me at ease. So this podcast really did that.
Good. That's what I want. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. So I appreciate your telling me that. That's just amazing. So the second thing that I learned, and because I'm still in therapy, so I've learned that consistent therapy is a must. Because when we think about this, having a breast cancer diagnosis is trauma. It's trauma. And one of the things that my therapist told me that I still see to this day, I actually interviewed her on my podcast and an earlier episode. And she said, we should not be waiting for the shit to hit the fan. We need to make sure that we are strong enough and informed enough and things like that to know that we need therapy, I obtained her services at the very beginning of my diagnosis because I knew that this was going to really affect my life. And I'm so lucky to have had her throughout my whole entire journey and going into even 2024. I see her on a regular basis, Dr. Terry Ann Harrison, and she is amazing. And on top of that, my husband and I see a marriage therapist, which has helped us tremendously as well.
So smart.
Just
so smart. Just in general, I feel like that's just a really smart thing to do.
Oh, yeah. And it's important when you get this kind of diagnosis, you want to vet your therapist. Have they dealt with this kind of trauma before? It's really cool because I referred Dr. Harrison to the Cancer Community Clubhouse that we have here in our own hometown. So we know that she has worked with cancer patients. And we know that because she's worked with me, but she's really cool. And she gives you really amazing things to think about and action-oriented things you can do to help yourself out. So she's pretty awesome. My third thing that I learned is that not all cancer patients are aware of the support out there. Like when I got diagnosed, it was so overwhelming. I was given a nurse navigator from our local hospital. So many things that were just piled, and I was so overwhelmed. It was so hard to read through all of it. Making sure that you have a relationship with other survivors in your area, which is really helpful because those are the people you learn more about who is out there in your own community to support you. For me, in our community, I know Nevada Cancer Coalition here in Reno, and I also have Cancer Community Clubhouse. And these two also work together. And so they bring these resources together to support survivors and cancer community. It's not all about breast cancer. They support all cancer patients and survivors. And so it's just really nice because they have exercises classes. They have therapy. We go to sound baths. They have all kinds of resources for anything you need to support you. And so I encourage everybody to get out there and learn who is in your community and plug yourself in. Because I didn't plug myself in at the beginning. And so it wasn't really until this year that I really started plugging myself in, even post cancer, right? So super important. But also it is. Yeah,
Ooh.
it is. It
Wow.
is. And they are nonprofits and they do anything they can to support. Yeah. Like the sound bath I get to go to every month. Sound bath by Wyatt. I'm going to be interviewing him soon because it is so cool. I don't know if you've ever done a sound bath, but it is pretty spectacular. He does it for Cancer Community Clubhouse for free to survivors every month. So we have people who, But I've also met people that I've interviewed. One gal, Dr. Tiffany Troso, she is an oncologist in New York. She ran across my podcast and reached out to me and talked to me about a passion project she's working on. And in order to support breast cancer patients and really women's health. She works really in women's health, gynecological type cancers. And so she has Winning the Cancer Journey. So even support like that, being able to reach out to her, and she's on one of my episodes that I will put in the show notes as well. And it was just great. She's like, "Hey, I ran across your podcast. Let's interview." I'm like, "Yeah."
That's really true.
So now
the power of podcasting though is at the global scale.
Totally.
And how many people you're going to connect with. Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool because now we collaborate together. So we'll ask each other things, and she's putting together these modules that is just going to bring such valuable to our community. And we are now connected where she'll ask me for advice or I'll ask her for advice and things like that. Another one is my new friend, Tammy Marcotte. And Tammy works in radiology and mammography and the genomic sphere. And so with women's health and cancers and things like that. So she is the breast cancer coach. And I interviewed her. She's out of Florida and she has a unique ability to be able to shepherd people through from the beginning of their diagnosis, helping them with reading their scans and understanding their options, because there's so many options out there that I just learned about just this last year. And I'm like, you would have been so valuable to me if I would have known you were there. So I interviewed her as well. So super cool.
Amazing.
My fourth one is this lesson. This lesson actually starts from 2022, but I want to emphasize into 2023 because I really started learning even more into 2023 is that I had no idea that there was any such thing as a reconstruction other than implants.
That was something I learned this year too. I honestly thought that was the only thing that women could do after breast cancer.
Yeah. I didn't even think about reconstruction with breast cancer. I wasn't even thinking on those terms anyway. So I've never been the type of person that wanted to go get a boob job or anything like that. I've just always been perfectly fine with my own breasts and things like that. I don't diss anyone for doing it. Anybody gets to do whatever they want with their body. And I know people that have, and it's great. It was a great option. Did I know that they could actually take tissue from your other parts of your body to reconstruct those breasts after a mastectomy? No. Yeah. And I learned too that sometimes in some areas, that kind of surgery is not offered. And mainly because there's no one in the area that specializes in that. And you really absolutely, if that's something that you are looking at, you don't want to go just to any plastic surgeon who might have something on their menu that they could do. You want to make sure that you go to the best of the best. Are they a microsurgeon? Have they done hundreds and hundreds of these kinds of surgeries? So it's just really important to understand what your options are, and that if it's not offered in your area, that does not mean that you can't go somewhere else to get it like I did. I went to New Orleans. They took my insurance. And so it's really important to be able to be educated about that. I also learned that some people think that when somebody has breast cancer and they have to have surgery, that they have to have a mastectomy and reconstruction, that some people think, oh my God, that's so great. Now you get to have your 20-year-old boobs back. Oh, good. Then you get to go have a boob job. And I want to be really clear that a breast cancer diagnosis, it's not a boob job. Okay. You have to have your breasts amputated, people. But I've just learned so much about what other people think. And that's just something that,
and you don't have to answer this. You can tell me it's too personal, but I'm going to ask because I'm curious.
I'm an open book, Min.
I know. This is why I asked. Do they look anything like your 20-year-old breasts?
They do. Okay. So let me just say that Dr. Cabling was my microsurgeon, plastic surgeon in New Orleans. And I'm actually going to New Orleans tomorrow to have my second phase done on the 20th, which is the 1-year anniversary of when I was told I was cancer-free, which is cool.
Amazing.
I told Dr. Cabling on the podcast interview that I did with him earlier this year that if I could never do phase 2, so phase 1 is to make sure the flaps and the blood vessels and all that survive.
Right, of course.
Which they did. And he made them the same size that they were before. I didn't want to go any bigger. Phase 2 in the breast cancer, breast reconstruction world, we girls call it, that's when they make them pretty. Anyway, so I told Dr. Cabling that if I could never have phase 2 for whatever reason, I would be okay in my mind and in my emotions and all the things with what I have right now. I am happy with them. He did such an amazing job with the first phase. Now, I know that some people have to go through several surgeries because of their circumstances, whether they're getting explanted and things like that. But I like them, Min.
Yeah.
I like them. So when we go in and he does the second phase, what he's going to do is he's going to assess the situation. I have no nipples. So I am going to be getting the 3D nipples tattoos about 6 months from now. But I have to wait until after you do the reconstruction and everything's healed and all that. So he's going to assess the situation, fill it in where it's necessary. I've got a couple little pieces that they're little divots that he'll fill in, lift, move, make them symmetrical. So we'll see what happens after this next one.
I may have you back on Share a Latte to see.
Oh, I would love that. Totally. It'd be so fun. I have an open book.
Such an invasive conversation. Feel free to say no.
So number 5. Let's see. Number 5, I learned that there are, I already kind of talked about this. I sort of married this in with number 3. And so with 5 is making sure that you know what those local community members are out there to support you. So a really wonderful organization. So I'm going to drop several episodes in there. One from Tammy Marcotte, one from Tiffany Troso. I'm going to drop one episode with Natalie Stevenson, who is with Cancer Community Clubhouse. And then there are 2 episodes from Nevada Cancer Coalition, because I had interviewed 3 people with them just to understand what kind of organizations they are. And in other people's communities, there are community members out there who are there to support you. So make sure that you are finding those people and plug yourself in. Mm-hmm. So I kind of married those in. So number 6.
I love that.
I learned more about what lymphedema is. I had no idea what lymphedema was. And I'm sure that there are people who still don't know. When I had gone to New Orleans, there is a lymphedema therapist there who was talking about all this stuff about lymphedema. I'm like, what the heck is she talking about? Like, what are we talking about here? So I really was super overwhelmed when I was there. So while I did learn some things from her, it was not until this past year, 2023, that I spoke to Catherine Bunker, who is a lymphedema therapist at our local hospital. And I went into one of her sessions one day because I wanted to learn more. And what I learned was, first of all, I had 3 lymph nodes removed from the cancer side in my lymph nodes, and then 1 in my right side. Mm-hmm. Well, Catherine decided to tell me, and I interviewed her as well, that I could not get my tattoo that I had commissioned. I commissioned a gal out of South Africa last year, a big phoenix that I was going to put on my arm. Mm-hmm. And I learned that I can't put anything on my arms because I've had lymph nodes removed. And the lymphatic system, you want to make sure that your lymphatic system is working properly. And if you're getting in there with little needles and things like that, it's not good for you. But I also can't sit in my new hot tub that I bought in October of 2022. I know. So I can get in it up to my belly button, but I can't have any major heat on the quadrant of my body. So I was a little upset with that. On the other hand, I don't want lymphedema. Yeah. So when you have lymph nodes removed, the idea is to prevent lymphedema. So there are things that you can do to prevent. So I wear a sleeve. I've got one of those compression sleeves. It's really cool too. It's called Athena. And I wear her when I am doing yoga and when I'm doing things that, are strenuous or whatever. Can't lift more than 25 pounds when things like that. There's just things I can't do. So I learned that, and I will put that episode on there too, because it's really important to know. Number 7, I learned that, you and I were talking about this earlier. I learned that we almost lost access for affordable access to the DIEP flap surgery, which is an autologous surgery where they took the tissue from my abdomen area and reconstructed my breast with my own tissue, fat, blood vessels, and all of that. We almost lost access because of the threat of CMS sunsetting the code, the insurance code that would eliminate the access for most women. So what was about to happen was that most women like me would never be able to afford a surgery like that. So really only wealthy people would be able to do that. So what happened is that we have a lovely surgeon in our country named Dr. Potter, and I actually interviewed her as well, and she's amazing. She actually started seeing discrepancies and little notations in insurance about the insurance code for this surgery. This is her livelihood. This is what she does for women. And so she started realizing that, oh my gosh, they are trying to make it so that they don't have to pay for the more modern version of the autologous surgery. It used to be the transflap surgery where it compromises your muscle. And then they figured out a way to not compromise your muscle, and it's a quicker recovery, and it's just more modern, and it is expensive. And what she did is she reached out to everyone, including like survivors and people like me. And we were able to rally the troops in all of our areas and get people to write letters and make phone calls, imploring them to not sunset that code. And guess what? It worked. CMS, power in numbers. So I always tell people, when you tell me that your vote does not matter, when you tell me that your voice does not matter, your letter doesn't matter, your phone calls don't matter, it is horseshit.
Yep, so true.
That's all I'm going to say. Now, that being said, that just because it worked and they ended up not sunsetting it, that does not mean that people should take their eyes off of what's going on with women's health.
No,
they need to pay attention to what insurance is doing. They need to pay attention to what they're doing in Congress or the legislature or whatever. Pay attention because even though you may not have had the surgery yet, and my key word is yet, you want to make sure that you're paying attention for your daughters, your mothers, your wives, and if you are a woman, for all the women around you. And men, by the way. Do you know that men can get breast cancer?
Yes. I learned that as well during our episode.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Lower number, but they still get it.
Yeah. So men still need to check their breasts and stuff like that. They really need to check in there. I do notice that I touch my breasts a lot. Yeah. I learned that there are resources I had no idea that was available. I interviewed a surgeon out of San Antonio, Texas, named Dr. Manas Chrysopoulos, and he developed an app called the Breast Advocate app. And the Breast Advocate app is really cool. And I could have used this at the beginning of my diagnosis because I could have been researching the different kinds of surgeries so I would have known about the deep flap surgery way before I ever even learned about it. I learned about it from 3 different people, totally different friends. But it wasn't until late October, early November that I really that I learned that we didn't have that option here in town, but I also wanted to learn more about that actual surgery. So the Breast Advocate app is cool because you can go in there, even though you may not know if you need surgery because sometimes you won't know right away, but it's really important to get in there and go through the wizard and answer all of these questions. And you can change your answers as you go throughout your treatments. And what it does is it narrows down ideas on what surgery might be best for your body. And it's backed with research, peer-reviewed research. Dr. Manas Chrysopoulos created this app and it's free to everyone. Yeah. And I know that Center for Restorative Breast Surgery, where I had my surgery and we'll go back there, they also have an app. It's in their website. So I'll put that website on there as well. But it's important for people to be informed about what options are available and what resources are available to help you with that. So cool, right? Breast Advocate app. All right. I also learned, this is really cool. When I was, it was right after my surgery last December, I went in to get I had to still get medications infused. And I went into the infusion center and there was this gal sitting next to me and she was doing the cold capping. And I learned what cold capping was before my chemo, but I ended up not doing it because I didn't think I had enough time. So cold capping is a way for people to try to preserve their hair while they go through chemo. And it's fairly expensive. There's a lot that goes into it. And you have to have a dedicated person who knows how to do it, go with you to your infusions and do it every single time. So my friend Amber Planeta, I interviewed her about her journey and her cold capping. And she walked us through the thought process and what went into cold capping. I just remember pulling back there's like this partition between patients. And I pulled that back and her husband was putting the caps on. He had a cooler full of dry ice and he would pull and you have to change it out every, hour or something like that. And it worked for her. And since then, I've talked to probably about 4 or 5 other people who've done cold capping. There's just a lot that goes into it, but it is such a great option for people who might want to try to keep some sort of normalcy, whether it be with their hair, right?
Yeah.
Because we women love our hair. I always had long blonde hair. Now it's short, but I learned so much more about what went into cold capping. So that's a great episode to listen to. Number 10, I learned so much more about what caregivers go through. I walked this journey with my husband. We've been to therapy. Our journey has not been without challenges, and people they just cannot expect there to be 0 challenges because this is a trauma. It's a trauma for you and it's a trauma for your caregiver. I also interviewed a couple more caregivers to their wives, and that was a really lovely episode. It was with Tom and Dino. And then my husband and I also interviewed as husband and wife, caregiver and patient. And there's like a 40% divorce rate with these kinds of diagnoses. And it makes sense. These things can happen because maybe there wasn't quite as deep of a connection before cancer. So if you don't have a good marriage beforehand or a deep connection or whatever, it's going to be really hard to get through. Is it possible? Yes, of course it's possible. And also somebody might be too young to even fully understand what's happening. There's a lot of people out there who might be a little bit too selfish and they're like, heck no, whatever. But we need to remember that caregivers, this doesn't just happen to the patient. It happens to the caregiver as well, especially if it's a spouse. And so you're living under the same roof. But there's like financial uncertainty. There's emotional things that happen. My body went through all kinds of changes, my mind and body. And so we had to go through this together. We've been to therapy before in our marriage. So it's not like when it was last February when I was going through a really hard time, depression and all the things. That's when we realized we're losing our connection. Something's happening here and we need to go to therapy. And so we've been in therapy ever since, and it has done wonders for our marriage. And so our marriage is so much stronger now. There's such a deeper connection now because of what we've gone through. But again, it doesn't happen for everyone. And it's really sad to hear that, because I really do believe that if people hold on and they figure things out together, I do believe that things might be different. So yeah. Okay. This is another cool one. 11. I learned what a pre-vivor is through my friend Vanessa Vance. So my friend Vanessa, a pre-vivor. Okay. So there's a survivor, right? We went through breast cancer. Yeah. And I am still you're considered a survivor forever, right? You're a survivor really since the time you get diagnosis. A pre-vivor, as far as my friend Vanessa and a couple other people I've talked to, they have some sort of a genetic predisposition, right? So they have something in their family. They have breast cancer in their family or whatever. Vanessa took steps to go and get a mastectomy and a reconstruction at Center for Restorative Breast Surgery. So we have the same surgeon, which is really cool.
She was never diagnosed?
Nope.
She just had the preposition and took matters in her own hands?
Yep.
Smart.
This is very...
That's gutsy.
I know.
Good for her, but still very gutsy. Dang.
Let me tell you what, this woman is badass. She is smart. She's super
I don't know
duper.
if I could do that if I was predisposed. I don't know. Good for her. I mean, a part of me wants to be like, I want to take matters in my own hands, do my own thing, and just. I guess
it just depends on how much you want to lower the risk of you getting that cancer. There are some people who just wait for it to happen. I just interviewed a gal the other day who was amazing. She had cancer in her family. Her mom had breast cancer back in the 90s, I want to say. So she always took care of her breast health, and she always went in and got her mammograms and all the things. The day she went in and she had breast cancer. And I asked her what her emotions were when she first found out. She goes, I'm going to say something right now. She goes, because you probably have never heard somebody say this, and I don't tell anybody actually. She felt relieved because all this time she said that the cancer was chasing her, right? Because she knew that there was a chance that she would probably get cancer. It was a matter of just time. And at the time it happened, she was like, okay, now I need to fight this fucker, right?
Yeah.
It's here. Now we're going to do this. Now, that doesn't mean that she didn't go through all the other emotions like fear and anger and all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, and she thought that maybe it sounded weird that she was a bit relieved, but I don't think so, because I had been thinking someday it's going to happen to me. Now, before I got breast cancer, I had a little bit of thing in my mind that breast cancer happens to other people.
Mm.
But I also knew that breast cancer could happen to me. And the reason it could happen to me, number one, is because I'd had 2 lumpectomies already. So I knew that I was nothing special. I am a 1 in 8 person. And yeah, it's just super bizarre, but a previvor. Yeah, that's a relatively new term. But Vanessa Vance, I interviewed her, and Kim Robinson. We all had the same surgery with Dr. Cabling and at Center for Restorative Breast Surgery. And I want to say they had Dr. Wright too. She was my oncological surgeon. She's the one that did the mastectomy. Right. Wonderful team. Wonderful team. I know really good surgeons. Mm-hmm. So people can reach out to me. But Vanessa Vance and Kim Robinson, that's a great episode as well. Oh, and also these two have become lifelong friends of mine. Of course. That's one of the silver linings. Yeah. Number 12, I have learned that hospice care does not necessarily mean imminent death. Now, I'm 56 years old. I've always heard hospice care. When I hear that somebody is going into hospice care, I hear, oh my God, they're going to die within a week or a few days or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I never even thought a couple months. I thought, oh my gosh, they're in hospice. They're going to be gone in a week. Mm-hmm. That for whatever reason. Well, I decided to interview my friend Jennifer Trustrip, who works with Infinity Hospice Care. And I met her in person and was so intrigued with her. I met her through Nevada Cancer Coalition. And I was so intrigued with her, and I wanted to bring her on to help people understand what these terms mean, like hospice care. And it is what it is, right? Hospice care, people are not doing well and they need that help. But people can be on hospice care for quite a long time. And it's a matter of keeping them comfortable at home with the assistance of a hospice care team.
Right.
So it just makes things better for the family, makes things better for the patient and things like that. Great episode to listen to with Jennifer Trustrip. I've learned all the silver linings that appear even through a messed up diagnosis like breast cancer. It's amazing. I'm talking about silver linings of lifelong friends that I've met that are in totally different countries like yourself. Had I not had this podcast, and we actually met on Facebook, a Facebook group, and you were looking for guests, and I felt like I would fit in really well with your mission and who you interview. And so meeting people like you, meeting people in common situations. I'm in a support group with the New Orleans team, like the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery, all the people who go there for surgeries. I have met people who've had their surgeries done with Dr. Elizabeth Potter, and we all help each other with, hey, what do I bring to the hospital? Hey, I'm traveling to New Orleans or wherever it is I'm going. What should I bring? What should I wear? Where should I stay? And so we all help each other with all of that. And so major silver linings. And I had a really good friend of mine tell me at the beginning of my diagnosis that she said, Jamie, you just wait. She says, you're about to find out that this is the sisterhood of all sisterhoods.
Oh,
and she is so right. She is so right. There is so much support out there, whether it be in person, on social media. And it's important for people not to do this on their own. It's important for people not to do that because they feel so alone. And it's a scary place to be. So reaching out to those people who can help you through it and also sit with you with your emotions and things like that. 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. So it is a huge sisterhood.
That's a scary statistic.
Yeah, it really is.
That's really scary.
Another one of my silver linings is this podcast. Who knew? And also another silver lining is, who knew I'd like my short hair?
Oh, yes. We talked about that on my podcast. Yeah.
Seriously. I'm like, I always was one of those people who's like, gosh, I wish I could have short hair like hers, but my face would not look good with that. And I never took the chance to even do it. But of course, breast cancer threw me into that,
Right.
kicking and screaming. But now I love it, and I'm not going to go back to long hair. So it's just, I'm excited about that. Now, let's see. Number 14, I learned that not everyone is going to understand the after effects of a diagnosis.
So
You have people that won't understand that you're still struggling. Like, for example, last September, probably early September, maybe late August, all the way through October, I really was dealing with some PTSD, and which actually goes into my 15. I didn't even know that there was such thing as PTSD for breast cancer patients.
Right.
But not everybody's just really going to understand that just because you are cancer free, that you're not going to necessarily be elated and excited and take on the world, because that's just, you just don't go back to normal. And yes, some of the struggles that you had been going through, things are getting better, but we need to help people understand, people even that haven't had the cancer, that cancer patients are they're going to be different. And usually for the good. I was just talking to a friend of mine that we feel like we are better versions of ourselves, but we see things differently. We certainly appreciate things a lot better. I was very appreciative before, but I'm even more so now in a different way. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to go through depression and things that trigger us. Like, for example, I am certain that every June, when June 11 comes around, I will probably be pretty triggered because that's when I found out I had breast cancer.
Right.
July 18th is going to be pretty triggering because that's when I started my chemo.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
we have to understand, and we can't just say, God, she should be back on top of the world, or she should whatever. It's so funny because people say, you are the strongest person I know. I could never go through something like that. And I think to myself, do you have any idea how crazy that sounds? Of course you can go through something like that because if you have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. So is
Anyway,
it just a new normal now? Is it just, to you, it's just a new normal? It's just you.
I guess, yeah. And sometimes people don't like the term new normal. I don't know. I think it's really interesting because some people say things that's kind of cliche, but yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Like, I feel like myself again. I feel good in my own skin. My husband and I are doing all kinds of things. I think that the way I look at life now is we got to do things now. Like because really, seriously, I might not be here today, right? Or I might not be here tomorrow. My husband and I might not be here tomorrow. And that's a scary thing to say, but it's reality.
No,
and I just look at things a lot differently about the future of my life and what that's going to look like. Could the cancer come back? That's another thing. We live every day thinking to ourselves, what the hell is that lump? Why? Things like that. Why am I feeling like this on my arm? Do I have cancer in my arm? You know, you don't want to be a hypochondriac or anything like that, but I do pay attention to my body even more now.
Oh,
and I listen to my intuition. So
is it scary that it took you getting breast cancer to have that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I had to get scared before I realized I was like, I just wasn't listening to my body. Whenever she needed something, I would ignore it. Yeah.
You know what, though? You probably have never sat down and talked to someone like me before.
That's also true. That's also true. After we recorded our episode, I paid a lot more attention to my body.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Which is great.
So if I'm feeling my iron deficiency start to kick in, I will right away change my entire diet for that week so that I'm fueling myself with more iron.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a little thing.
I mean, so if it takes talking to someone like me, fabulous.
Yeah.
My work here is done.
Amazing.
So I'm glad that you're paying attention. I want people to pay attention. Damn it. I need you to pay attention because if you don't pay attention, you risk getting not making that early detection, and early detection is where it's at, right? You don't want to just sit there and let yourself feel the things that don't seem normal to you.
It's not just about the early detection and recognizing that you're not listening, but also being an advocate, right? I remember
Yes.
our podcast episode, one of the things that stuck out to me crazy was when you said to your doctor initially, like, no, like when you were going in for your regular mammogram, that no, there was nothing new or different. And your husband was like, what are you talking about? That's a lie. That's not what's happening at all. You didn't tell them about the other things that you were feeling.
No, because I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to be going in to get my mammogram in 3 weeks anyway. If they find something, they find something, right? But my husband's like, yeah, no, that's not true.
No.
And I'm like, you do have a lump and you did feel things. And so I immediately picked the phone back up and said, yeah, that's not true. And the nice thing is that they will move that mammogram up if they can to a closer time. And they moved it up by 3 weeks. So thank goodness.
Yeah.
See, listen to your husband too. Okay. The PTSD thing, it's so real. From about August through October, I was realizing I was feeling disconnected again and having some PTSD and really struggling through some things. And one thing I realized was October is a really significant month for me. Now it's even more significant because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's my birthday. It is the month that my mother died 4 years ago that just rocked my world all the way down to the bottom of the barrel. So every October, I'm very triggered. In the same regard, I also love October. October is literally my favorite month. And I'm like, why the hell does my mom have to die in October? Why do I have to get breast cancer? It's my birthday. It's the prettiest month. I love fall. My mom loved fall. I love fall. It's a feel good month for me. But now I have to every year think about my mother on October 6th. I have to think about breast cancer. So I was going through some PTSD and there were a few people that didn't understand that. And so I had to really learn how to create some boundaries around that. PTSD is real. It's a trauma.
Absolutely.
This does not just happen to military people.
No.
It happens with any trauma. Just be aware of that. And these things can rear their ugly heads at any given time, 5 years down the road. You know what I mean? So I encourage people to allow themselves to walk through these things and recognize them and be nice to themselves. I learned that I can embrace my body image better than I had expected. When I found out I had to have a double mastectomy, I was really horrified, Min. I was horrified. I was so upset, so scared because I've always loved my breasts and I was afraid that I wasn't going to love my body again. And the fact of the matter is that I do. And one of the reasons that I do is because I know my husband loves my body, but it's not just about him. So I don't do things for my husband, right? I do things for me. My husband is just the icing on the cake that likes to talk about how beautiful I am and things. So I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. He used to kiss my bald head. All right. He loved my bald head.
So sweet.
He I know.
Everybody wants somebody to kiss their bald head.
If you've never watched American Symphony with John Baptiste and his wife, I won't even tell you anything about it. Just watch American Symphony. I watched it last night with my husband and it is so soul stirring. It's amazing. Just watch it. Anyway, body image. I actually have a funny story. And I know that we're getting up on an hour here, but
don't worry. I'm here for
I love my body. I love my body. I touch my breasts a lot. Yes, they do feel different. And that was one of the things I was fearing, but I do feel okay. I feel good. I feel good in my head and all that.
Yeah. And
my husband and I just recently went to Costa Rica and we had such an amazing time. And I got to see the monkeys. We went ATVing. The trip itself was a turning point, I think, in our marriage too, which was really cool. We both had such an amazing time. We ate wonderful food. We met wonderful friends. We went on a catamaran trip. We saw the monkeys. We went ATVing. We went zip lining. We went hiking. We watched sunsets all the time. It was just an amazing trip. And we stayed at a condo. Our friends, he and his wife own a condo there in Jaco. And their condo has like this garden view. It has this balcony and it has a garden view, very private. And we were on a catamaran one day, all day, had a great time. We were drinking margaritas and had a wonderful time. We got back to the condo, and we were just both jazzed. We just were so happy. And I went out on the patio. I went out on the balcony and I went to put my towel out there to dry off and everything. And I had my bathing suit on and I looked around the balcony, just down there and all over the place. Literally no one was around. No one. No one. Like, I looked. I took off my bathing suit, put it on the chair, and walked back inside the condo. And
badass Jamie.
About 30, and I was totally naked. And about 30 to 45 minutes later, my husband and I were sitting at the dining room table, and we get this knock on the door, a little ring on the doorbell. And my husband's, okay. So he goes to the door, and I could hear him talking. And I heard him go out to the hallway and shut the door a little bit. And so I heard him a little muffle. So he comes back inside. He says, hey, babe. And I said, yeah. And he says, we can't be naked on the balcony. And I'm like, what are you?
I love that you love your body, but I need you to dress yourself.
I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, well, someone saw you naked on the balcony. And I'm like, what the heck? And he says, apparently it was the security guard. And mind you, my husband had gone out there and took off his trunks and came back in too. But I don't think anybody could see him because the towels were up on the balcony. But my breasts were sticking out. And I said, what are you talking about? Because yeah, he says, do you speak Spanish? He said, yeah. And I guess he put his phone up and he showed him this like little text message looking thing that says, cannot be naked on the balcony.
Love this.
So come to find out, there is a security camera off to the left of the balcony. And so, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of proud of you. Go, mama. That was awesome.
I've always been a pretty uninhibited person as it is, but I'm 56 years old. It's not like I just go out there and flash my boobs anywhere. But I immediately sent a message to the owners of the condo and they were racking up.
Love it.
And so they're on their way to Costa Rica right now. And they posted something on Facebook and I said, hey, just be aware of what you shouldn't be doing on the balcony. They were cracking up. Anyway, it was so funny.
Before
but
we move
my
on
point
to this one, because your point is that you fell in love with your body again, but did this, this had to have taken time. You couldn't have woken up the next day after your surgery and been like, I still love my body. I'm sure. How long did it take for you to fall back?
No, the deep flap surgery is no joke, but it is such a great option for people who I did not want implants. It's just something I didn't want. I have nothing against them. I just personally didn't want them. And I'm glad that I had that option. Yeah, it was a good, probably few months, 4 or 5 months or 6 months even for me to really get used to my body.
Right.
Because your lower abdomen is a little bit different too. And this is where they can do revisions as well. So there are certain things that happen in certain parts of your body that are normal. And so once you go into the second phase, they can assess the situation and revise from there. But it took me several months, which I think is quite normal because you are different. My breasts are about the same size. I will say that they're more the same size of each other because I know that one breast seemed to be a little bit larger than the other one before cancers for whatever reason. And there are surgeons out there like Dr. Cabling and Dr. Elizabeth Potter who really do pay attention to holistic health, holistic care with their patients because they understand that this is a very traumatic time for them. Yeah. And they're not just surgeons that come in and say, done, boom, see ya. And it's not outpatient either. The surgeries that are done here in Reno or in a lot of other places, it's all outpatient. Mm-hmm. When you go to a surgeon like Elizabeth Potter or Dr. Cabling or any of the surgeons at the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery, these are not outpatient. You are in the hospital. And so that's the one big piece of holistic care. Mm-hmm. Because they're taking care of you. So I think that the care that you get from your surgeons makes an enormous difference in the outcome.
Interesting.
And I really want people to hear me on that. Do not go to someone who just happens to have something on their menu. Yeah, we can take your tissue from here and do this. If they are not well-versed well practiced, have done hundreds and hundreds of those kinds of surgeries, you need to ask yourself twice or not even twice.
Yeah.
Move on. Go somewhere else.
Right.
Learn where the good ones are.
Absolutely.
I've learned that people are listening to my story.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
Oh my God. I
love that this was one of your lessons because I was like, it was such an interesting story though. Why wouldn't people listen?
Well, it's fun when you get an email or a text message or a phone call or a message on social media saying, hey, I ran across your podcast. I live in Australia. My sister in India has just been diagnosed with breast cancer. She's 32 years old. And we ran across your podcast and we were wondering if you could help us out a little bit. And so we got connected. Yeah. And so I meet with them on Sundays when it works out for us because it'll be like nighttime for me, morning first, this gal in India morning. And then her sister lives in Australia. So it's afternoon there. And so we get on there and talk about her treatments and how she's going to lose her hair and all those things. But also I have heard from people who have Googled Dr. Cabling's name and my podcast popped up. And so they'll shout
that makes me so happy.
I know. I'm like, okay. So people are listening. Like they'll send me messages and say, hey, I just listened to this episode about your friend who did cold capping and it just really made a big difference for me in my decision and things like that. It just gave me so much to think about or whatever. Yeah. And so and I just want to keep it coming. Yeah. I love that.
The storytelling. I love
that. And that's my mission. That's my fire in my belly is I want people to hear this. And even if it's not you that has cancer, if maybe your sister or your aunt or your brother, or because again, men get breast cancer too. We cannot leave that out. It can impact someone in your life. And so share it. I have learned to create healthy boundaries. This is really big for me.
Say that louder for the people in the back.
Boundaries, healthy boundaries. Yes. These are not meant to cut off people.
No.
They're not meant as barriers, putting up barriers so you don't have to talk to them or anything. These are boundaries. Mm-hmm. These are recognizing some of the things that happen around you with maybe some toxic things that are going on, things that are not helpful to you. I have learned that things that are not helpful to me, I need to put up those boundaries and or just create boundaries. I don't like to say put up because that kind of gives a more of a cut them off type thing, but boundaries. You can come up to here, but not up to here. Yeah. And that's been really big for me because I've always been a people pleaser. I've always wanted to help everyone, make sure that what can I do to help and all this thing. And I'm still like that. Don't get me wrong. I am there to help advocate. I'm there to help you with a meal train, GoFundMe, do whatever it is that I can do to help. But I got to have boundaries. And I will tell you, that's really helped a lot with my mental health.
Good. Yay.
Yeah. I have learned at 19, I have learned that it's okay to be loud and bold about my mission. I know that not everyone is going to appreciate my loud and boldness.
But that's okay. They're not your people.
But I'm okay with that. They're not my people. And that's okay. And you know what? Someday I might be their people because even some people might be watching me on social media and posting things and all about my podcast or doing whatever. And they might be like, oh God, there's another post, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if that's really what they're saying, but I'm sure there's someone out there. But the bottom line is that someday those messages might just be resonating with you. So I'm okay with that because I know that my mission is clear. I know that it's genuine. I know that it's authentic. And I also know that it's incredibly important. Let's see. I have learned that we talked about this a little bit earlier. Number 20, I've learned that my marriage has strengthened. I am so incredibly lucky, knock on wood. I'm so incredibly lucky that I have the husband that I do. We talk about how much we love each other. Everybody knows us on social media. Everybody's always watching us and things like that. That doesn't mean that we haven't had our challenges. People know that I do tell the good, the bad, the ugly. I have a private Facebook group called Phoenix Catching Fire. I've got like probably 350 people on there. And I So it's not all about roses and tulips and bunnies and butterflies in my life. I tell the good, the bad, the ugly. If something is distressing me, I will say it loud, say it clear. And a lot of people will reach out to me and go, God, say it louder for the people in the back. Thank you. Right. Like you just said, but I do like to share with people how happy I really am with my marriage. And these are things that we've worked on. We've done the work. We've done the work in the last 20 years. We've done the work like crazy this last year and a half. We've done the work. And I'm lucky to have someone like him, because not all men will go to counseling or therapy, but he'll go begrudgingly. He goes, but then he realizes, this is really helpful, actually. He was the best caregiver. And I really think that because of all of the things that we've been through, the death of my mom, the death of his father a year later, but also the death of his stepfather. So we lost 3 of our major parents in our family within 2 years of each other. And then we just lost our beloved Delilah, our German shepherd, who shepherded me, if you will, shepherded me through the death of my mother and through my cancer. And so I miss her so dearly that it was so tragic. It just happened a few weeks ago.
Sorry.
But we've gone through this together and we've repaired damages and things like that. So I love him.
I think that's also a testament to like other women who may not have found the person, but that those men are those people and men are possible to have.
Yes.
So I love that.
And it's possible to repair. If both people want to do the work, it is possible. It's hard because you have to talk about a lot of the elephants in the room. And it's not easy, but it is well worth it. It's very uncomfortable, but it's well worth it. My husband told me the other day, we were sitting there and he says, I can't believe I get to wake up to you every morning. I'm like, I know. And I thought to myself, I'm so happy with him and I just love him so much. And I love that he says these things to me and I say these things to him. And it makes me cry. Anyway, then number 21, we're almost done here. I know there's a lot. I learned that YOLO, you only live once. And I knew this before. Okay, so we always said YOLO before. My husband never did, but I've heard the term before in the past years. But this last year was my second year of retirement. And so when we went to Costa Rica, we went all out. Like we did a lot of things. And my husband's like, well, it's kind of expensive. Should we spend them? And I'm like, YOLO. And so we both went and got a tattoo. I don't know if you saw my tattoo, but I had, let me see if I can, let's see. Hold on. Let me see if I can turn around. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You see it?
Yes. Oh, it's so pretty.
It's Phoenix and she's got little breasts on her. And so I had a gal out of South Africa commission it last year. And so it's a one-of-a-kind Phoenix. And that was like my spirit animal throughout my cancer journey. And I was going to put it on my arm. I can't because I don't want to risk lymphedema. So and my husband has always wanted a mountain lion on his calf.
Okay.
So he's been collecting mountain lions for years. And every once in a while I was like, I got to go get that mountain lion. It just never did. And we were in Costa Rica and about a week before we left, we were with our friend Juan Carlos, who is our travel guy, and he's great. So if you ever go to Costa Rica, and definitely look up Juan Carlos, and he'll bring you to places that just a mind blow. And we said, tattoo, YOLO. And he's like, hey, I know a tattoo artist. He did my tattoo. Look at my tattoo. And he did my wife's. She has a big phoenix on the side of her body. And they were so good. So he brought us to this guy, Jack, in San Jose, which is the capital. And that's where the airport is that we flew into as well. And Farrell and I, my husband and I, had a really wonderful bonding day getting tattoos together.
Love it.
And it was just,
love it.
And at first he was kind of anxious leading up to it. He's like, I don't know. And I said, babe, YOLO. He's like, you're right.
Love it.
22. I have learned that my sweet German Shepherd doggy, 10 and a half years old, Delilah, saved my life through the death of my mother and my cancer. And I brought it up just a little while ago.
Mhm.
She saved my life. She really did. And she suddenly died. My husband was taking her for a walk along with her father, Loki, who we still have around. He was taking her for a walk, both of them. I had just gotten out of yoga, got a message saying, hey, babe, I need you to come into the canyon. Delilah has collapsed. She's alive, but she's collapsed and I am trying to carry her out of here and I need a blanket and I need help.
Right.
So I ran home. We live really close, grabbed my shoes and my neighbor. We started to go into the canyon. I called him up and said, we're on our way in. And he goes, babe, she's gone. She died in his arms and it was very traumatic. Now, that being said, I know that she was doing something that she loved to do because she was super happy about being out there walking. But it was so traumatic the way it happened and what we had to witness, especially our dog Loki, her father, was pushing on her, moving her around and trying to wake her up. And it was just so sad. And it's so terrible having her gone out of our house because our house is so quiet now and Loki's very depressed. But I am so grateful that she was there. She hung on for me through the traumatic things that has happened. And I know that she'll be with me for life. So if you are in a situation like having a breast cancer diagnosis or whatever, having a pet like that, if you can, is so helpful to get you through because she used to come into the bathroom when I was sick on the toilet or on the bathroom floor during my treatments.
Right.
She would come in there and lay with me. She would come into my healing room and because I had a healing room that my friends all put together. And she would come in there and lay down on the floor with me for hours, or she'd get up on the bed with me for hours and just lay with me. And it made such a huge difference. And I knew that that was happening, but I learned so much more just in the last month since she has died, how much that dog meant to me. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And number 23 for 2023, I learned that the last 32 podcast episodes have filled my cup multiple times because of the incredible people I've gotten to meet. I have received such wonderful, invaluable insight from each and every person I have interviewed. And I told my husband last night that these interviews are like a drug to me, like a really good drug.
Love it.
They just really touch my soul. Every time I say, okay, well, I will see you next time on this next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. And I click off. I thought, my God, that was so fucking good. Yeah. It was so good.
Aww.
And so I just am so grateful.
Yeah.
I really want to say this to my audience and to all of the people that I've gotten to interview, that I'm just so grateful that you have been part of this project of mine, this passion of mine, and this mission. And I do not have any problems whatsoever getting people to interview on my podcast. I'm just very picky about who I do interview. I want to make sure that every single episode is super valuable. I want people to be, even if they know a little bit about what we're talking about, I still want people to walk away with something that they've learned. I have learned from every single person that I've interviewed from day one. And so I've just really come to the realization as we end this 2023 that this is something that's going to be of long term. I will be making sure to drop an episode every single Sunday. So I will say that in 2024, I will start naming it season 2.
Ooh,
So
that's exciting.
I know. So we're just coming to the end of season 1 and we're going to go into season 2 starting in January.
Is it going to be the Sunday? What is that?
Sunday.
7th?
I'm just going to do the set. Yep. Every single Sunday.
Amazing.
7 a.m. like clockwork.
7 a.m.
And the content is just so much fun. And I'm learning to get this on YouTube and things like that. I know that there are other things that I've learned, but those are 23 really major things that I have learned.
I love these 23 things. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, they're not just post-cancer stuff for me. It was post just life in general. You only live once. You need to love and value the people around you. Setting healthy boundaries for everybody. That's why I made you say it louder.
Yep, for sure.
But mostly I love that you found so much joy in creating this podcast, because I know that one, as a woman who has listened to it during her own scary moments, you're just going to impact more women who listen to it during their own scary moments, and they're going to find solace, calmness in your voice and your message and your story.
Good.
Love
I'm
it.
so glad. That makes me really happy. And I'm just, thank you for being, a champion for me as well. And
I'll be listening for season 2.
Yeah. And we have other things we're going to be doing, right?
I know. I'm very excited.
Me
very
too.
Excited for you.
Well, to my audience and to you men, this is going to be releasing on Sunday, December 31st, the very last episode. But as we are interviewing right now, it is before Christmas, before the new year. And I just want to wish everyone a very peaceful holiday season. I know that people have just celebrated Hanukkah and getting into Christmas and then the new year. And I just thoroughly appreciate my audience. I appreciate any kind of reviews that people can give me, or reviews and what are the ratings or things like that. They absolutely do help. And I just appreciate people listening. With that, do you have anything else to say before we go?
Just remember that there's true power in storytelling. And Jamie, your story is so beautiful. And I loved having you on my podcast episode. So definitely check out the episode in the show notes, because it's a perfect tie-in to this episode where Jamie dives a little deeper into her story. I just hope a lot more people learn to really take care of themselves and their bodies through your podcast.
Definitely, people. Everyone needs to do that. Thank you, Min. And to my audience, once again, thank you for joining us. And I will see you next time on the next episode of season 2 of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open for guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. I rely on people like you to listen, rate, review, and share this podcast with your loved ones. So please enjoy my trailer and any other episodes. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm on Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.